Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Nicola Capsicdale, and I'm the Software Account Manager for AdvanceNet. We are so excited to have Paula Quincy joining us today. Paula is a mindset enabler. She helps people and organizations maximize their output, both at work and at the home. Today, we will be taking a look at how the corporate landscape is changing heading into 2022 and beyond. Welcome, Paula.
And so great to be here with everyone today. A chilly day in Joburg, but hopefully we will be able to have some fun today. And those of you that have attended my talks before know that I love interaction and engagement. So please do post your questions, and we'll definitely be answering them at the end of the session. So today I'm going to be talking about the corporate landscape of the future. I'm going to be talking about the impact of the change that's happened in the last 18 months, some tips and tools to reduce stress, and then also skills that we will need to develop to be able to thrive in this ongoing changing environment. So welcome to the human capital era, where there is a heightened focus on the human aspect of work. And we've realized the importance of investing in our greatest asset, which is our human capital, and that the future of work is actually human. There's a lot of talk right now about hybrid workspaces and what that's going to look like. A lot of organizations are grappling with putting models in place, whether it's a 2-day or a 3-day working environment, as opposed to working from home or remote working. But what we need to be very cognizant of going forward is being intentional about the time that we're going to be spending when we are in the office. Because why would you want to commute to work and to the office to go and sit on your laptop or your computer in front of your colleagues and not engage? So we're going to have to be very intentional about when we do meet in the workplace about using that time around creativity, brainstorming, problem solving, decision making, and using that time to connect as employees, as colleagues, and as a workforce. The biggest requirement going forward right now is that of trust. First of all, trusting our employees that when they are at home, they are working, they are productive, they are doing what is being required or needed to meet their individual deliverables, to meet the team deliverables, and to meet the organizational deliverables. And right now, it's much harder to build trust in an online environment as opposed to what it is when we are in person. Because when we're in person, we can gauge different responses, we can physically see someone, there's tangible things, there's also the nonverbal cues that's easier to pick up in a face-to-face environment or an in-person environment than an online environment. And right now, this is going to be one of the key requirements going forward from an organization point of view in terms of trusting employees, but also from an employee perspective. Can I trust my organization? Will they be there for me? Will they support me? Will they help to continue, grow, and develop me? Will my job be safe? And if you don't believe me, I have been running a poll on LinkedIn and to gauge what the greatest barrier is to having effective relationships in the workplace. And as you can see, absence of trust has come up as the #1 factor. I'm currently running the same poll on Twitter, and it's showing the same trend where the #1 factor is absence of trust. So this is going to be key from a leadership and an organization perspective going forward. When it comes to leadership skills, we're going to have to be developing ourselves in terms of remote leadership skills. And if we look at the top skills that are going to be required from a leader perspective, it's self-awareness, empathy, servant leader qualities, documentation, and ability to build trust. Now, documentation is around documenting processes, documenting policies and protocols, documenting ways in terms of making it very clear for people what it is expected of them, what are they working towards, and giving them a sense of purpose and how their contribution is contributing to the bigger picture, so the strategy of the organization, as well as how their contribution is being measured and also how they are being appreciated. And so we're having to look and implement ways in terms of no longer are we measuring productivity and hours at desks. We're now looking at how do we measure output. And a lot of companies are struggling and putting those models or those metrics in place. I personally don't like the servant leader acronym or terminology. It gives a sense of hierarchy. And so I personally believe that the leadership skills we need to be developing right now is holistic and empathetic leadership. Holistic in that we are now seeing our employees as a whole. We are stepping into their very private, sacred space. In other words, their homes. We used to go to our homes to get away from what we were experiencing in the workplace and to shut off and shut down and leave that world outside and just have some peace and calm and tranquility and spend quality time with our families and our loved ones. Whereas now that we're leading people in the home, we're stepping in and we're seeing them as real human beings, not just the 9-to-5 version that we used to see. We're seeing what our employees are struggling with when it comes to managing and juggling work, home, life responsibilities and family responsibilities. And we've seen the stats show us that there's been a huge impact on women in particular in the workforce, particularly working mothers and women in senior positions where they are starting to downscale or step out of the corporate workspace because they are just finding it too exhausting, too much of the stress and the pressure that comes with juggling all of this and having to potentially also take care of others, as in older parents or other people in the household. We've also seen in terms of the stats from mental health for men in particular, where we've seen the suicide rates spike, where 1 in 4 men in South Africa in particular have indicated or are more susceptible to suicide than women. And so the ability to build trust is key in terms of also checking in with our people and understanding where they are at from a personal point of view in terms of not only mentally and emotionally, but also obviously being able to deliver on what's required in the workplace. So as you can see, remote work has brought its own challenges with it. We've already been grappling with a lot of those in terms of the last 18 months. It is no longer the new normal. This is the normal. And we have to learn to operate and navigate our way in a landscape that is ever changing. Every time we get another wave of the pandemic, it's going to bring new challenges and more uncertainty and changes with it. And so we have to learn to adapt to those changes. The benefits of a remote workplace is that quality of lifestyles have changed, where people have now realized that they don't necessarily need to be in the areas or the suburbs or the regions where they are, and that they can live more of a quality lifestyle by downscaling their lifestyles. And also from a talent retention and talent attraction perspective, the talent pool has now opened up where talent will be available in provincial, national, and even international territories. And that is going to be a key factor going forward when it comes to the workforce and the talent and the skills that we're going to need to require. We've also had to develop our own mental toughness. First of all, from a concentration point of view, so at home, being able to concentrate and do and deliver on what needs to be done. Working online, there's a lot of distractions that happen online on our screens when we're on Zoom calls or MS Team calls. There's also distractions with the notifications and the alerts from the different apps and platforms that we're plugged into. And there's also a lot of distraction that happens around us in terms of in the home, whether it's dogs barking, the neighbors, our own children, or whatever is going on in our household environment. So we've had to really learn how to concentrate and focus and really focus on the jobs that we need to do or the tasks we need to deliver. We've had to develop our own confidence when working at home or alone and on our own, to have to be proactive and to make decisions and or to attempt problem solving without the input that we would have easy access to in the workplace. We've had to learn how to cope with our own mental health and wellness, with that of our families and our loved ones and our children, and also in the workplace as well. We've also had to learn to cope with our own fears of potentially getting the virus, the uncertainty that comes with, are our jobs safe, especially those people that have lost their jobs or businesses that have had to close down. Our salaries have been impacted, and we've had to learn how to cope and reinvent ourselves, or the buzzwords that are being used, pivot our careers, pivot our businesses, or reinvent ourselves in different ways with the new opportunities that are opening up in the landscape. And then cohesion. We've had to learn how to work together in a remote world, which is much more difficult and challenging than in person. We don't experience those small personal interactions of, walking up to a colleague's desk, saying, hi, how are you? Those personal interactions, having the interaction and access to our leaders or our managers, and being able to go and have coffee chats or sit around a boardroom table or a meeting table and come up with ideas and brainstorming. And in the thick of all of that, we've had to try and control our own composure as well with what we've been going through as individuals, the very real loss of COVID and the loved ones that we've lost, and not being able to find closure and grief. We've also dealt with our own loss in terms of things that were familiar to us. So for some people, the simple act of getting up and going to an office every day gave us a sense of purpose and a sense of identity. So a lot of people are feeling that loss of who am I and where do I belong and where do I fit in now? And also people that are living on their own or alone, how do they deal with chronic loneliness and disconnection and isolation? We can be in a home or an environment where there are people around us, but we can still be feeling alone and lonely. And this has a direct effect or impact on our mental health. And so what we've begun to realize is that mental health is health, and that it is a daily necessity. We need mental health to be able to function, to be able to be productive and operate at our optimum, and to be able to bring our best selves to the workplace. And this is going to be a key thing going forward with organizations that are going to be seen as places that people want to work at, is those organizations that implement real mental health or health and well-being strategies and structures as part of their offering to their employees. It's going to be the one key thing that employees are going to be looking for when they start looking at organizations to go and work for. How serious are you about my health and well-being, and what support structures are you going to be providing for me as an employee to show me that you really care about me and you value me as an employee, because that will give me a sense of safety and security, and it will then motivate and inspire individuals to want to be adding value and contributing in terms of their roles and their jobs. Being very aware of what the triggers are when it comes to mental health issues. And I'm hearing this a lot. What we've done in terms of remote working is all we've done is we've replicated what happened in the workplace to now online. We are not doing or living or have implemented what true remote working or flexible working arrangements and hours and systems and processes are. And that's why a lot of people are suffering from digital fatigue. Digital fatigue is a very real thing. And it's contributed to or brought about by these back-to-back online meetings that we have. And just because we're not commuting to work anymore, and we supposedly have gained back 2 hours of our days, if you think on average, the average commuting time, particularly in Johannesburg, on average 40 minutes to the workplace, if the school run is included and if there's no traffic hiccups. But those hours have now been filled with being online, because it's easier for us to walk from the bedroom, the kitchen, the lounge to our workstation or our workplace where we're working from, and to be online earlier in the morning. And it's very easy in the evenings to be able to just quickly check in on an email or quickly answer this or quickly do that. And before you know it, you're still working 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. And also, if you're in global companies where there are time zone differences, being online to be able to communicate and connect with those international colleagues. So also unrealistic expectations that everyone's expected to be online because you're at home now and therefore you've got access to technology, not feeling valued, job insecurity, working on your own, so lone working, linking to that as well is a toxic workplace culture and lack of support from managers and organizations and peers. So we need to be very cognizant of these triggers going forward and build in processes and systems to help navigate these things. And our new biggest concern going forward is that of burnout, because of the way that we are working and the long hours that we're working, and employees not feeling like they can put boundaries down in terms of personal hours and work hours, and that it's blurred. One blurs into the other. And particularly also when it comes to managing our household responsibilities and the stress and the pressure that comes from all the change and the uncertainty that we are experiencing as individuals and as organizations. So being very aware of telltale signs of burnout, and one organization that I'm working with, what they have done and what they've implemented is on a Wednesday, they have made no online meeting day as their way of giving permission, but also leading by example, that Wednesdays are the days that people can get on with stuff and do stuff and not be stuck online back to back in all of these meetings. And they've also implemented policies in terms of on the weekends that employees should not be online. They actually want employees to use their weekends to recharge themselves and to connect and spend time with their families and their loved ones. So from a leadership point of view, being aware of these signs and when it comes to your individuals, but also in terms of how you can provide support and put structures in place. And the reason why I'm going through this is because it's a key to the skills that we need to develop, and I'm going to touch on that just now. What some organizations have also realized is that some employees are not safe working from home because they experience domestic abuse or domestic violence. And we have seen the impact of COVID not only locally, but also globally, when in terms of divorce rates and divorce stats spiking, as well as gender-based violence stats spiking. And I have just recently finished working with First Brand Group, where they have implemented, and they've been very proactive, one of the most proactive companies in terms of a zero tolerance policy around abuse. And they've implemented some really proactive structures to help employees that are unable to escape by going to the office because they're in a toxic situation, in a toxic environment. And linked very closely to this is from a legislation point of view. A lot of companies have not updated their policies and their protocols to comply with the home now being the workplace. And their policies still refer to the workplace as in the workplace itself. And they can find themselves in a lot of hot water because they are not compliant. There's about 11 pieces of legislation that companies need to review in line with their policies and protocols to ensure that they now are compliant in a remote online working environment. So what do we do to address this going forward? We need to take a holistic approach. Those companies that invest heavily in health and safety will be seen as successful. They will be able to attract key talent going forward. They will be able to retain their existing talent going forward. They will be able to build communities where individuals can feel that they have the ability and the permission and the right to take care of their own well-being and that of their families, but at the same time, the organization is playing a role in that too. And this is also providing opportunities for growth as well. Just because we're not in the office and we can't do training and development in the classroom like we used to, it's how do we adapt our training and development to an online environment, but also giving individuals the ability to develop their own skills and resources. And so what we're seeing in terms of the latest World Economic Forum stats is that they're predicting by the year 2025, 50% of the workforce will need reskilling. And what they're actually saying about that is that when we look at how these skills have changed and shifted from 2015 to 2020 to 2025, there's quite a few skills that have dropped out of the top 10 and have been replaced by new skills in terms of where we are right now in a remote world, and because a lot of things that we were going to implement has now been accelerated in terms of online and digitizing and automating processes. And if we look at the top 10 skills for 2025, they fall into 4 key categories: technology use and development, and that is not necessarily the same as AI and robotics; problem solving, working with people, and self-management. And so what we're seeing is that we need to start embracing the 5th industrial revolution. We are no longer in the 4th industrial revolution. We have long moved out of that, and we are in the 5th industrial revolution, where we are responding to the last 18 months of change, and we've realized how we've needed to innovate, and how connection, and particularly the human connection, has become key. And if we look at what the 5th industrial revolution is all about, it's about creativity, a common purpose, and working together towards meaning and inclusivity. And that's another topic that is very key at the moment in not only locally but globally, with organizations implementing their diversity, equality and inclusivity strategies. And it's not just about a race or a gender perspective, it's about true inclusivity. And how do we create an environment where everybody believes and feels and experiences that they belong and that they're included in what the organization's objectives and future is. So we've had to reassess what success looks like for us as individuals, but also for us as organizations. And the key focus areas for us is around well-being, our own knowledge, and being able to upskill ourselves from an individual point of view, but also from an organization point of view. And key is those human skills, as I like to call them. They're often referred to as soft skills in the workplace, because they're intangible. It's not easy to measure those soft skills, but there are ways that we can do that. Being able to celebrate life, and this is where a lot of people talk about gratefulness and mindfulness, celebrating the fact that, you know, we may have had COVID and we got off lightly compared to others. Celebrating gratitude for our families, our loved ones, being able to go out for a walk and appreciating nature, those kind of things. Mindfulness is very topical and very key. Work-life harmony or work-life balance, as it's referred to. How do we give ourselves permission to take time out and develop those skills, and good health right now? Those are the things that are coming out as the most important. And so how do we build relationships in a digital world? Because it's much more challenging than in a workplace or in-person environment, but it's definitely not impossible. So we have to be more intentional about making time for small talk. So every time we get onto a meeting, a team meeting or a one-on-one meeting, it's not just about business, making time for small talk and checking in with each other and building those relationships. So making time for social interaction. Making use of video as much as possible. And I know there's challenges with network and broadband, but where possible, to encourage everybody to have their videos on. We cannot use this excuse that because you're online, we cannot pick up these non-verbal cues. We actually can, and it's one of the skills that we need to start developing, is how do we now pick in or tap into those cues, those non-verbal cues that we're seeing on the other side of the screen, by increasing our listening skills, by increasing the view of body language, and also what people are not saying. Also, more frequent one-to-ones, particularly from a leader point of view, in terms of checking in with our individual employees or our direct line reports and our peers to create a support network and support environment. Being able to implement boundaries between work-life balance and work-life schedules and routines. Being aware of schedule clashes. When we were in the workplace, we may have been able to have our team meetings at 10 o'clock in the morning. Right now, that may not be possible because we're having to homeschool our kids, or we're having to go and fetch our kids from school. So it's impractical to schedule a team meeting, for example, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when half my employees are driving to go to school to go and fetch their kids. So we need to adjust our schedules and be flexible and adaptable. And then constant feedback. Feedback is important from an individual point of view and from a team point of view, but also from an organization point of view in terms of what is going on, what the priorities are, what we're working towards, what the strategy is, what our wins are, what our successes are, so that we feel included and we feel a part of the organization. Being aware of preventing work addiction and encouraging our people to take time off, respecting people's work-life balance. From a leadership point of view, very key to be leading by example, because just as parents, we create the tone and the culture in our home environment for our children to thrive on, and how our children mimic our behavior as adults and parents, the same applies in the workplace. Our employees look to us and they will mimic our behavior as leaders. And empowering people to say no and push back, and being protective of our team members' time to be able to focus and deliver and do what they need to do, instead of having these back-to-back meetings all the time. So here is a quick little tool that you can take away with you and you can use in the workplace to help build relationships and connection. I call it the V.U.C.A.H moments. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the term V.U.C.A.H. V.U.C.A.H stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And the new one that's been added to that is the H, which is hyperconnectedness. So what you can do in your team meetings online is, depending on the size of your team, each person gets a minute or two to vent. In other words, express, complain about something that is sitting with them, whether it's personal or work related. Now, obviously, you've got to create the ground rules in setting up this environment, that whatever is shared in this space is respected and it is contained in this space. In other words, it's confidential in this space. Because working from home, there may be things at home that are frustrating us that we can't talk about or we can't share with our loved ones, or there may be challenges in the workplace that's frustrating us. So first of all, letting each person have a turn to vent and just express themselves, okay? Then the second round is each person gets a turn to update or give a status report on what they're working on for that week, what they're delivering and where they are at from a deliverable point of view, and are they meeting their deadlines, are they on track, etc. And then each person gets a turn to go around and ask what they need in terms of help, either from their peers and their colleagues or from their leader or manager. And what this does for you as a leader and a manager is it gives you the opportunity to first tune in and understand what is going on for each of your individual employees by what they are venting about, so where they're at and what's sitting with them on a mental, emotional perspective, where they are at from a status update point of view, and potentially where you may need to step in and offer additional support, or manage timelines, reprioritize projects, or bring in additional resources. And by sharing this in this environment, it creates an opportunity for you all to connect as a team, to feel connected, to build a bond, to build trust, and to build that human side of the team and that environment in a remote world. And you can also use this formula at home in a more informal way around the dinner table to build more connection in a family environment as well. Because if you don't ask your people how they're feeling, you're never going to know how they're feeling. So create an environment where people can speak up and speak out and they feel valued and appreciated. So 3 key skills that you're going to need to develop going forward from an individual, a self point of view, because we can't only rely on companies and organizations to develop us, we all also have to be proactive in terms of developing ourselves. So self-leadership. And really what self-leadership means is the ability to consciously influence our own thoughts and behaviors in order to achieve our personal or the organization's goals. So if I'm feeling down, if I'm feeling sad, if I'm struggling, if I'm not coping, what do I need to do to help influence my own mindset? And this is where our self-care and our mindfulness routines come in to help us shift our mindset from a potential negative space or a demotivated state into one where we can do what we need to do to get through the day. The next one is self-discipline. And all self-discipline really is finding compelling reasons to do something, to commit to doing something, and seeing ourselves through to complete that task from the start to the finish. And this is where we can set ourselves up in terms of accountability partners. So whether it's people in our personal space or whether it's people in the workplace, we can set up buddy systems with our colleagues where we can check in with each other and hold each other accountable and responsible. We can track and measure our own process and progress, whether it be through timelines or project charts or status updates. But it's really about setting tasks for ourselves, even if it's on a bad day. If I can just set 3 tasks and get through those 3 tasks today, that in itself is a success, and I've accomplished something. Also, the self-discipline to be able to put your hand up and say, I'm not okay and I need help. We need to make an organizational environment for people where they can put their hand up and say, not only say, I'm not okay, I'm sick. They can also say, I'm not okay, I'm feeling sad. It's okay to not be okay. We're all human at the end of the day, and we've all started to see the human side of ourselves. And we need to be able to create an environment to be human going forward. And then the last skill that we need to look at developing for ourselves is that of adaptability. People often call, or the buzzword that's being used at the moment is resilience. And we need to be able to develop being resilient, or what I call adaptability, because that's really all what resilience is it is the ability to be able to adapt to difficult situations, manage our emotions in the process, and to be able to keep functioning and operating at a level that we can still do what needs to be done. And so building our resilience or our adaptability and flexibility. When it comes to self-development, how do we assess our own self-awareness and our human skills or our soft skills? It's about understanding where our strengths are, and it's understanding where our development areas are, and then what development plans can we put in place for ourselves as individuals, but also as organizations to help our people develop these critical skills going forward. So how do we go from survival to thrival? Introducing peer-to-peer appreciation programs, peer-to-peer support programs or buddy systems in the workplace, implementing employee wellness and well-being programs, and creating an environment where that creates trust and safety and connection. So you either have a positive or a negative impact in the world, but there is no in between. And I hope that's given you some insights into how to navigate the changing landscape going forward in your organizations. Thank you very much.